This video is sponsored by Dungeon Craft, the coolest f***ing idea for a book with not one terrain piece, not two, but like, a lot more than that. And they all look good. The front and back sort of good and evil variations are my favorite. With such incredible punch-out tiles... Oh, you gotta cut them out. Damn it. Well, it's a good thing there are so many more pages to use. And hey man, snipping papers is therapeutic. It's like they knew. It takes me a while to actually friggin' draw a map and not accidentally smear some of the details, but I threw this map together in less than 5 seconds with such an incredible product. They're also really close to reaching their goal, and the book is only like 30 bucks. If that ain't a steal, then neither is raiding a Best Buy during a blackout, except only one of these great deals is legal. Now go watch the video. Giants are old, really old. This is a funny part about almost any epic history. Nothing cool and interesting happened recently. The world is always in shambles compared to the eons of conflicts and kingdoms that have shaped it. And sometimes these nonsensical histories conflict. So I guess retcon what I said about aboliths being old, cause now giants and dragons are the oldest. With differing editions of the Forgotten Realms, Eberron, Black Sun, Greyhawk, Middle-earth, Shadowrun, and 100,000 other paracosms, you come to realize how malleable history is from different people's perspectives. Tangents aside, let's venture backward as I try to make a ripple effect happen. In the relative beginning, when the oldest dragon was still challenge rating 10, the god of the giants, named Annam, married and porked a mountain called Othia. Then from her volcanic womb came the first giants.
Their big-ass footsteps with the fees and the FIFO fums meant that they owned the place.
As Titanic's sibling demigods, they were given order by Papa Annam. Fun fact, Annam was also the name of Vietnam before the 1940s. This order is the base of their philosophy and is called the ORDNING, which is just a hierarchy of religious politics. It's the name of their religion and describes their social standing. At the top of the pantheon is Strong Sauce, who's like Storm Jesus. Him and the Storm Giants have the most authority. Below him is Memnor and his Cloud Giants, the dude from Thor Ragnarok and his Fire Giants, Thrym and his Barbaric Frost Giants, pulled straight from the Norse Jotun and Jotunheim, Skoreus Stonebones, the only giant with the last name, and he picked the dumbest one possible, and he's got stone giants. Then we have Grolantor with his fat boys. There's a handful of other gods and mini-deities that pseudo-giants worship, but who cares about cousin gods? All the divine extended families are weird shit in pretty much any religion, like Freyr, the phallic fertility god, or Sheila Nagig, the saggy boob grandma who just does this all the time. Anyway, the 6 sons of Vietnam built the Empire of Giants, a kingdom that ruled for 4 million years. In some settings it was called Ostoria, but you can call it whatever. At some point, the wealth of the giants and the greed of dragons paved way to their conflict. It's all muddled because ancient history lacks fine details, but personal conflicts between territorial dragons and expanding kingdoms led to an all-out war that lasted 1,000 years.
Guys, this could have all been avoided if someone just hired a land surveyor.
The 6 brother gods fought with an ancient red dragon whose name was way too similar to Gary Gygax. And after frickin' forever, their kingdom fell. Everything and everyone's life and breath contributed to this war, until everyone got tired and just kinda stopped fighting. Nobody won. Now only the icy capital of Vonenheim remains, lost under the power of encroaching ice. The fact that everyone kinda lost the war really pissed off Annam, so he said,
"Fuck you guys. You get the silent treatment till you get your empire back."
He just straight up disowned the entire pantheon, which is one of the most
"I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed"
moves a dad can make. History lesson over, let's move on to the culture. At the top of the ORDNING are storm giants, some of the most isolated creatures on the material plane. The reason they're at the peak is because a storm, in a way, is what happens when immensely powerful energy interacts with any of the 4 elements. They're like the avatars of giant power. They just sit in the thinking man pose in any place society will never reach, and places where few creatures dare to visit. Some locations include the bottom of a deep sea ravine, the top of the highest mountain in a range, ancient ruins at the center of a vast desert, MySpace, and Bing. In a way, these guys can tell the future. Their bodies, minds, and existence are bound to the elements and the world around them. They can look at a flock of birds, see how those birds ride the wind, and then know when a war will happen in a few years. They can essentially read butterfly effects, but these omens are also extensions of the giants themselves. A storm giant's social standing is presented as an omen before it approaches, which is the most badass visual ever. Really, the only thing these guys do is piddle around, reading omens and waiting for a sign that says,
Big Daddy Vietnam is coming home.
instead of actually reclaiming their kingdom to make it happen. Bunch of morose idiots. Cloud giants are the floating dudes who inspired the story Jackson and the weird plant that grew maybe just a little too big. These sexy titans live in small families like the Ideals 50 lifestyle magazines, and live to gather wealth. Very few still float around in cloud castles because 9 out of 10 of them were ripped asunder during the war. Wherever they choose to place their homes, they carve beautiful halls and line them with more wealth than any king will ever see. Unlike the mystical nature of storm giants, these dudes wear their statuses on their sleeves. Well, in their hallways. Wealth directly translates to power for cloud giants, so they all act very much like noble human families. They're just taller than castle walls and could beat your ass if they wanted to. Their culture promotes flaunting wealth, as well as keeping secrets. They often wear masks that hide their expressions when dealing with other giants or powerful mortals. The territory surrounding a cloud giant's home is heavily affected by their presence, in a number of ways. First, most local evils see a 20-foot tall noble huck a boulder hundreds of feet and think,
You know what? I'm gonna call a realtor. We're moving.
As a result, it's generally a safer place. Second, all humanoids pay tribute to the giant families. Things like cows, ores, grain, and any other goods are given as offerings. These gifts pretty much say,
Hey man, thanks for driving away those wyverns. Also, thanks for not smashing my house and taking my cows because, I mean, come on, nothing's stopping you.
And lastly, big ass plants. Cloud giants have little gardens that grow food maybe just a little too big. If you want to live in a pumpkin, just ask a cloud giant. He'll hook you up. Fire giants are the blacksmiths and generals of giant kind. They're the least effective giants when they're isolated, because during ancient history they were three-trick ponies. What they do best is forge, engineer weapons and armor, and fight like zealots. But to forge, you need to mine ores, which the stone giants used to do. And to win wars, you need tactics, which the cloud and storm giants used to do. Because they aren't as bright as some of their siblings, not including hill giants or frost giants, they pick up some of the slack with slaves. Stolen humanoids work tirelessly in dangerous mines, bringing rare ores to great forges stoked by bound or hired wizards. Literally nothing compares to the masterwork tools a fire giant can make. If the most esteemed guild of engineers hired a dwarf and trained him from birth till frailty to make armor, a fire giant would laugh at his final magnum opus and make a better set of armor in like 3 days. They work with slaves sort of like distant fathers, not outright abusive but very apathetic of their achievements. If you're not a giant, you don't matter much. The only thing they'll always lack are solid tactics, but any adventurer who faces them with nothing but raw power will meet their match. One step lower than fire is ice, and frost giants share some similarities, but also a lot of differences. The frost holds no resources or ores to work. Out there it's just you, the biting cold air, a titanic worm, a colossal evil bug, 4-armed gorillas, deadly white dragons, and maybe like 3 trees. If you go far enough north in any world, you're either Saxton Hale or you're dead. To call them badass monster wrestlers would be completely accurate. And their ordning follows suit. How fucking jacked you are determines how much authority you have. Plain and simple. It's like if Australia was covered in snow. They tear apart giant centipedes and wear their teeth like trophies, then steal the eggs just to beat up the babies when they hatch. That's it. Frost giants are simple, but it works. Stone giants are nicer versions of fire giants. They live deep below the deep below, hiding in winding tunnels that touch the Underdark now and again. They're also craftsmen, but their work is entirely form over function. Their culture is focused on art, regardless of how expensive art school is. And if you can't art, and your carvings look like stick figures, then everyone hates you. To be a stone giant who sucks at art is like being a normal digital artist, who sees all the other amazing art online and starts to hate themselves. The ORDNING wouldn't like us. These uncultured swine are put at the far corners to guard hallways or whatever. The rest of the stone giants eternally pursue the perfection of their art, and at a certain point can imbue arcane runes into their carvings. Art isn't just carving, but to be alive is to practice art for these cave-dwelling nerds. Rock-throwing techniques, carving, painting, and even cooking is more about creativity and poise than effectiveness. The cool thing about stone giants is they don't know jack poop about the world above, and call it the realm of dreams. The sky, the wind, seasons, and change are all otherworldly to a stone giant.
Just like you loser. Go for a walk. Got him.
At the bottom of the totem pole are hill giants, big fat idiots with tiny wieners who just eat everything, all the time. That's their whole shtick. No joke. How fat you are is how cool you are, because if you can find a lot of food, you must have a lot of smart. They eat anything from people to mold, get sick, poop their pants, and keep eating. They also have a really fun game called Stuff Stuff, which is like Chubby Bunny but with gnomes and other tiny people. There's also a bulk of almost giants that are like fucked up version of giants, distant cousins. But this video is long enough already, so I'll make them quick. You have ogres, which are just slightly different hill giants featured in the greatest film of all time. Oni, Shrek cousins with crazy magic powers who have a really creepy smile and like to eat babies. Ettins, Demogorgon ogres who have funny conversations with themselves. Trolls, the fuck you giants who have Deadpool powers. Cyclopses, which are deadlier ogre cousins with poor depth perception. And Fomorians, the once sexy Fey giants who got cursed with poop face after a Fey noble said, "You're ugly on the inside." I've got a few more interesting aspects of giants before I wrap up the video. The first being Mot and Mog. Mot means super good and holy. Mog means not cool and bad. If you ever learn giant, just present a bunch of ideas to a giant that you meet, and ask whether the idea is one or the other to understand that giant's culture. They also throw rocks, which sounds basic at first until you realize your entire house could be crushed from almost 300 feet away in 6 seconds. Looking at their stat blocks, it's easy to see them as any other old monster. That's because D&D somewhat lacks scale, and when you play out size on a board, you can't quite visualize the terror of an enormous creature. Go watch Attack on Titan to get a real feel for it. Ain't nothing like taking a bath on the 3rd floor of your house, then feeling an earthquake, and then suddenly having a hand the size of a horse reach in through your window and palm your vulnerable nudeness. Given a muscle twitch, that hand could break a rib or two. Giants are fucking scary, man.